family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Ja.
And I am Alex Cuffy, hosting the Focus on Liberia Marketplace today. My other crew, Gabriel, Larry, Telvi, are out today on different functions. This is the Focus on Liberia Marketplace, where we discuss all things Liberia relating to business, finance, and economics. Today, we have an interesting topic, the evolution of the Liberian dollar, how this whole Liberian money started from 18 wee till now. This will be a two-part series this Saturday, and we will continue and end that next Saturdays. So today is one of two. And we have an interesting gentleman by the name of Mr. Percy B. Harris, who will be doing the presentation and who is our guest today. He hate to be called guest. He say he's a presenter, but he's our guest presenter.
Yeah.
Percy. But before I come to Percy, I'd like to say hello to everybody in the listening land, those who are listening now and those who are listening later. Hello to everybody in the cyber world, and hello to everybody in Liberia and around the world. Welcome to Focus on Liberia Marketplace. Percy.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, FOL and the team. Appreciate you having me here today. I'm going to endeavor to explain the evolution of our currency. What happened? What passed for Liberian dollar or currency or medium of exchange. And I'm going to go through a little bit of historicity, and this is mostly of the history. I'm not going to delve into those too much into the crisis that arose from the fiscal condition of the country, but we're just going to focus on the Liberian dollar and vaguely touch on how it led to conflict there in the country. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. The reason I'm doing this is because I started on this track, understanding my country. Even as a kid, I tried to understand the environment that I found myself in, how I came to being, me personally, how I came to being, who were my people, and the life they led and stuff like that. And then the broader country as a whole, I tried to understand that, and my equity have led me into people like mentorship with Professor Burroughs, Dr. Samuel Toll, and others, Dr. D.L. Woodon. I've had conversations with them behind the scene, trying to understand the nuances in our country and the history and why things happen like the way they did. And so in the process, I have been able to, in Liberia, say, follow the money, right? I tried to follow the money that the money and that underpin the crisis that we have. Why was it this way? Was it financial? And why, given the fact that I also have a background in finance, I hold an accounting degree from Johnson and Wales University, and I work in financial services now for maybe 9-10 years. So I have lent my expertise to the historical side of things, and so to try to understand them better.
Thank you for that brief intro, Mr. Harris. So we would like to go into your presentation without further ado, so that we don't take a lot of time today. We want to keep it to an hour. But let's go ahead. Let this whole Liberian dollar thing, when it started from 18 something. Again, Percy is going to go into that history, and then we're going to get to today. We're going to get to say the Totmont days, and then the we'll stop at the Talbot day before Talbot left the scene, and then next week we'll continue from Dole to the war, and then to current situation and some of the physical things that are not being the Liberian dollar. We'll be talking about then. So Percy will be at the driving scene. It's okay for me to call you Percy, right?
Yeah, you can call me Percy.
Okay. So Mr.
I will show you.
Percy, what,
I will show you the
what,
other name that you're not supposed to know when you get comfortable. But call me Percy for now.
okay, so why is this important? That's the first question. Before you delve into that, let's understand why is this important, this topic.
This topic is important because it's I'll put two reasons why it's important. It's important because where we are as a country today, most of the contemporary issues that we are faced with, whether economically or politically, you can run back into history and see where these very turbulence started from, and the rationale behind them, the question that needed to be answered, and how the policy makers of the day decided to address them. So that's one. That's why it's important. You have to look to history to see, okay, where we started from, why these things happened to the country, and the way things were done, and then sit back today and say, this is where we are today, right? Try to, since we understand what came before us, how do we sort out those problems now in an equitable way, so that we have a country that is not based on classism and all those things that have brought us to the standstill that where we are today. And so that's the reason why it's important to look back on these issues from previous generations and previous times, and try to take a holistic look at it and try to formulate solutions, real workable solutions today, that we make the country better for everybody, not just few people, but for everybody for that matter. So that's why it's important.
And you're right, because it's good to study the historicity of issues and events, and then it gives you a broader picture as to how to find solution to some of these things. So again, before we move ahead, we like to underscore that we have some people watching. We have Mr. William Mac Davis watching. Say what's happening today. I'm watching anyway. We have Dr. Wood Tote Nguyen Yeto watching. We got our man Haruna. Asma Keita is back. Haruna, I was trying to connect with you, but let's connect after the show. Maybe I was trying to look for your digits. I couldn't find it. But yes, so Percy, let's go into the presentation and let's slide through it. At some point, we'll take a break. We'll take a commercial break, and then we'll continue.
Okay, sounds good. Let's move to the next slide. Okay, so before we start to talk about what happened before, everybody know the land that is Liberia today was actually inhabited. There were people there. It wasn't like an uninhabited place. This was a fledgling community of people, and so there were the economic activities there going on, and stuff like that. So the history of of how people transacted with one another in terms of economics did not begin with the arrival of the settlers. The settlers were not the first people to come to this coast, and so it's important to address the prehistoric Liberia before the settlers. And so what economics was during that time was mostly what we call a barter system. And the barter system is where you give mean this, I gave you that, in depending on perceived values, right? So that's what it was there. And mostly there was no initially there was no currency, right? People traded what they have for what they wanted. So so one of the things through reading the historical records, cola nut was one of the medium of exchange there. There was rice, there was salt also, there was camwood, gold and iron were also part of these trading communities. So those were the things that it used to trade, right? And in the process there was trading hubs, right? Our people before the settlers had these trading places where we call them market. If you live in the interior part of Liberia, like I as a boy, I was fortunate to live in Nimba, a place called Ban, right? And there was this day they have market day. They have these things called market days, right? Where everybody will bring goods to the market, and people from different places will come to the market, bring goods to the market, and trade and trade there. And so I reckon this was something like that our people had. This is not this was that what I experienced in Ban wasn't new. I think this was something that our people have been doing long before. And so they had these trading towns. So for example, places like Zozo is an old trading town in Lofa in the northern part of Liberia. And so these were one of the places that people used to go through. And Zolowo, Bozika, and then we all know Bopolu. Bopolu was a really mega hub for trading, for the trans-Sahara trades, right? People will come from the Sahara, come down, they bring their goods and services, and then people from the coast will come with sword and stuff. And these places, these were trading centers, and there were other places in and around Moreover, but I decided to just highlight those few places, right? And so those were the economic transactions for our people prior to the settlers took place, and those were the primary medium through which they took place. I mean, later on, the interaction with the Europeans brought them into contact with other goods from Europe and stuff like that, which they were exchanging for their local goods, for stuff that they needed. Somewhere in between there, currencies started to emerge. But before that, our people used the oldest form of money in Liberia today. You can trace back to outside of goods and stuff. It's it's those bar that you see there. It's called a Kisi bar. The Kisi bar is the oldest.
The black one.
Yeah, those low bars that wrap up like that, they used to
Yeah.
use them for money, right? So the area that is now Liberia, the oldest form of money, what we know to be money now, was what was used there. That's the oldest form of money you can trace to the land that is now Liberia, the Kisi bar.
So people used to exchange those things.
Yeah. They used to
Yeah.
exchange those things for goods and services.
I see. And I also, you're talking about the barter system. I also read down somewhere down the line when we were in grade school that there was also bartering involving slaves as well.
Yeah.
People used to exchange the when the free slaves came to Liberia,
Mhm.
and the what you call it, the settlers, right?
Yeah.
They also the people, the indigenous people that was there were also traded in some way. Is that part of that?
So what happened? The way let me go back to before the settlers came, right? Because it's important to distinguish what our people practiced for what became known as chattel slavery, right? So what our people practiced was indentured servitude is different from slavery. Indentured servitude is okay, my pa owe you money, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And my pa can't pay the money, so my pa say, okay, hold my son will work out this debt for you. You know what I mean? And after
Okay.
the duration of that, the person can return or stay in the community or assimilate in the community that they stay in and whatnot and become part of that community. So that what it was. That was indenture servitude. That was you can call it slavery, you can call it a form of slavery or whatever, but it was not what our people were subjected to as they went across the Atlantic, right? The chattel slavery, where you had working for free and the whipping you, all those things that they went through. That's not what happened in Africa. So we have to distinguish what our people were practicing versus what were meted against them in the Western world, in the Caribbean and other places. So that was
I thought in Liberia was part of in Liberia specifically was part of the barter system.
so battle would be you give me this, I give you that, right?
Yeah.
That's battle, right? And indentured servitude would be you owe me this, you give me somebody to work out the debt. Indentured servitude. The person finished working the debt, or they can either go back home, or they can stay in the community because they already put roots down and know the place and whatnot. They won't go back, and they become part of that community, right? So that's what our people practice. When the settlers came, they met that system in place. That's what you see. Our people used to give their children to the settlers, not so much because they owe debt. Sometimes it could be, but to give them to the settler to learn their ways, to sort of assimilate, learn their ways, and and come back to them and to help them develop their own community also. So later on, that system became known as pawning, right? It's called pawning. What we call pawn now, it was pawning. Pawning became an official medium of salvaging debt under the Barclay administration. I think it was 1904, something along those lines, when Liberia was expanding into the hinterland. And so they started to recognize pawning, right? So it became, down the line, it became known as pawning. It was indentured servitude that had morphed down the line and became known as pawning among our people. So our people can give their children out, right, to a family or so, and work it out if they owe a debt, or just put them with a family to go get educated, kind of stuff like that.
So is that what led to all these different people from different tribes staying with the settlers, and then they started adapting the names? Then they themselves became, maybe you got, Congo Basso, Congo Crew, Congo Nimba, Congo, is that what led to all that stuff?
Yes, it was those interaction to some extent, I don't want to say some extent, to a large extent, that led to that. Yes, it was this interaction between our people that led to that. So and it's very important to stress, right, that what we know as ethnicity in Liberia was very fluid. It was a very fluid thing. So you take a guy for Grand Basso, you bring him to Sano, the man stay there as an indentured servant, he work, and he won't go back again. He become a part of that community, right? And he's no longer, even though he's from Basso, but he's no longer a Basso man. And his whole reality is in the crew setting. So his children grow up crew. He married a crew woman and become a crew man in a sense, right? So it was very.
We're talking about that moving around into marriage. We're talking about the settlers and the way the other tribes came to interact with them. Where today
it was part of that too. It was part of that too.
Okay. So let's move to if you're done with that, let's move to the colonial currency, if you may.
Yes.
Okay. So before you go back to the other slide. So now, how did they? I know you talk about these Kissy, whatever it is,
the Kissy bar,
but so they also traded rice, cola, in exchange. So if I wanted a pair of shoes, I will go and give you cola, or I'll give you rice, or I'll give you salt. And vice versa, and things like that. So they came to a marketplace.
Yes.
Okay. So
they came to a marketplace to exchange those goods and goods to one another.
Okay. Yeah, but we're not talking about slave. But then somebody is saying, Aruna is saying here that he writes that Mr. Harris, my grandma was a slave. She was taken due to war and sold as a slave. She never knew her family. In fact, she got separated from her only brother, who got sold to another chief. So basically, we're not talking about, I think, to answer your question, maybe you correct me there, but we're not talking about the slave trade per se. We're
not talking about the slave trade.
The advent of the Liberian dollar and how exchange of goods and services in the absence of actual money. So which was the evolution, the initial evolution of money, right? So that's what we're talking about here. We know that, people traded slaves even when money was there and they were getting money
Yeah, they
and other
did
stuff,
trade
but
slave.
that's not what we're
That's
talking about.
that's not what
Yeah.
I'm getting at.
Okay. So let's move to the colonial currency.
Mm-hmm. So, having laid the groundwork for what was passing for economic exchange at the time, and then came the settlers. When the settlers came, money was
Also, by
already.
this time, all these things we're talking about, the exchange of cola nuts and salt, the settlers had not come yet.
No, that prehistoric, that now we call it prehistoric. That before the settlers, that's how our
Before
people
the settlers,
conducted
okay.
themselves economically, right?
Before 1822, before
Before
1821.
1822, that's
Okay.
how our people conducted themselves.
Okay.
Way before 1822, not just before 1820, but way before 1822. That's how our
Okay.
people conducted themselves, right? Later on, let me just state that later on the Europeans came in the broad currency too, but by and large, the transaction were mostly the same. It was mostly in goods and services, right?
Oh.
And then came the settlers, right? And when they came, so what happened was each colonization society, when they were sending people to Liberia, they had their own money. Each colonization society had their own money. There's a picture of one down there, right? So the Maryland State Colonization Society had their money. I'm sorry, and ACS also had their money. I don't know if that's the right picture there, but the ACS also. So everybody had their money. The people in Grand Basso had their money. So when you were coming to Liberia, they gave you those. They gave you those money, but you could only use it within the confines of the colonies that you found yourself in. It was not something that you could go into the insular and go buy money stuff with. So it was almost like a voucher, right? They give it to you. You come and you can use. So the ACS had these warehouses where people can go and buy goods and services when they come there, right? So you can use that. You can use those monies and go to the ACS store or the whatever the colonization society that send you to Liberia. You could go to their store and readily use that money to get goods and services. I mean, to buy goods. Okay, that would be an example of a store in Monrovia. That's what an ACS store where I won't call it store. It's called warehouse. That's what an ACS warehouse look like. So with those monies, you could come here and get goods and services. Usually, what the term was, they would give you I think 6 months worth of 6 months worth of ration. They call it rations, and you can go here and buy goods and services from there. They will give you a plot of land for you and your family to be on, and that's what it was. And so that was the colonial currency. That's what it was. So different people issued different currencies. So different colonies had their own money and whatnot. So that's how it was.
So were they printing these monies in Liberia or they were printing it in the US?
I reckon it was on arrival. I think it was on arrival when you got there.
Okay.
This is what they gave you, and then you can use that to go to the store.
That was after the settlers came in now from 1822 onwards.
Yeah, it started on 1822. After 1822 onward, when people started coming to Liberia now, that's how.
So they started bringing their voucher or their money.
Yeah, they gave them their voucher and the money. Yeah.
So if you were they took that money from America, right?
Yeah, they came from America with it. So,
with that money, okay.
Yeah, when they're sending you, so when they're sending you, say for example, they're sending you from New York City, Virginia, wherever it is, they will give you their who are species now you traveling on. If you're traveling on the American Colonization Society, they will give you their money. If you're trying on the Maryland State Colonization Society, you get a Maryland State Colonization Society money. And you come and go to their stores and buy your rations that you need for the time being that you'll be there for. They will give you a plot of land and stuff like that. After 6 months, you're on your own now. So
okay. Well, we are told here is saying that barter system. He thinks that our people used to give human for material also. Is that right? I think I asked that question.
You did. That's what I'm saying. What you need to distinguish indentured servitude, right? Okay. So nobody will just give a free. Our people never just give their people name for free for no reason. Like to just give you a human being for no reason and stuff like that. No. So if you did something, if you owe me something, or say indenture could be people who are also transgressed, right? right? They could take them and they would serve time and through working for other people, but it wasn't what we know as, it wasn't chattel slavery as we know it. What became chattel slavery in the West, that's not what was practiced in Africa. That's what I'm trying to. That's what people need to distinguish. Yeah, people were given here and there, but they were not whipped. They were not worked to death and whatnot. The contractual basis or understanding was not the same as it was in the United States, Caribbean, and South America, wherever people went to work on plantations at.
So as these people came, like when the American Colonization Society decided decided to when they decided to say return the quote unquote free slaves. So
Mhm.
as they send them, as the ship came, they came with a set of money.
They
And
came, yeah,
that money now was used in exchange. Then it began to circulate.
yes.
Okay. So it was a limited amount of money, but it was
It
circulating
was
among
circulating,
them.
and for the record, you can't use it outside of the colony. That was
Okay.
just for you to go to the store. And it was right within there. It was circulating, but it was in the colony. You can, if
So
you
when,
went
when you
to,
say colony, meaning this the different places they settle.
yes,
So for example, the people that were in Carwell, the people that were
yes,
on the island, the
the
people that were
island, yes,
wherever they found themselves. Okay, so they
yeah,
use it within that enclave.
within that enclave.
Okay, all right, all right. So then they came also to the warehouse
Yes,
to trade.
to
Did
buy.
did, did, did they bring goods to the warehouse for trading?
So no, the warehouse already had goods there. So the American Colonization Society they also encouraged trade, right? They were involved directly in the trade too, right? The ACS were also involved in trading and on the coast also, right? So they had the warehouses there where they had goods and services also in, right? That people coming to Liberia would go to and purchase goods and services that they might need, right,
Mhm.
for they and their family, because it was like it almost like you're a refugee. If you went through the refugee camp, which I think you did, if you went
Mhm.
through the refugee camp and you came, they would give you, they would say to give you rations for you and your family for 6 months. The people will be responsible for giving you rations, right?
Mhm.
And then after that 6 months, they will give you land. They will find land for you to make farm and stuff like that. So you should be able to sustain yourself after the 6 months interval. And so that's what the arrangement was. So these stores were just places where when newcomers come and get stuff, so you can see the cask in front there where they kept, I think, drinks or rum or whatever it is if you needed room, and cutting stuff and things like that they had there. And so this is where you go to buy those things, right, with the money that they give you. But
Okay.
it's only good for the first 6 months of your time in Liberia. After that, you should get make farm. They should make farm or start establish yourself in some sort of business, which other settlers did. So that's what it was. And this was like a store in Monrovia, that one of the examples of the store that it went to.
Okay. So we got some comments there. For example, Yehia Kawi is saying that people kidnap innocent people, Percy. We practice charter slavery, Percy. I think you spoke about that. And he also says that slaves were executed in Bopolu, I think he meant, for trying to escape.
Then I mean he that's a she. That cool.
Oh, she, okay. And Benjamin J.K., thanks for that correction. And Benjamin J.K. Anderson documents this thoroughly.
Was it pervasive? That's a conversation I will have with Cole, right? Was
Mhm.
it was it a known? Was it everywhere was practiced? I mean, I mean, could it have been anomaly, right? And this was it the norm of the day for the people that where we call Liberian non-practice, where I mean, slaves were caught, people were executed. I mean, was it a norm, right? Is it so there are norms and then there are exceptions? Were these
Yes.
incidences
So,
exceptional?
yeah, but so she goes on to say that chattel slavery wasn't practiced in Africa.
No,
Is to diminish the Arab slave trade in West Africa, which was chattel slavery.
at it worse.
That is worse. Okay.
So yeah, so chattel slavery wasn't practiced in Africa. I already stated that, right? But some variation of it, and I described the variation that existed, at least for the broader part of what the society at that time practiced, right? So I'm not saying people wasn't readily caught and sold into slavery, but was it the norm? Was it everybody else practicing it? Was it what our people knew to be their way of living? I mean, that's a conversation on another show. I will appear will go on and we can discuss that.
Okay, that's a challenge to her right there. So we started with this, and then we started using these monies, the money that was brought in. When you say 6 months, so was it given to people within a 6 month span, or to use, and after that it devalues, or what, or it's not useful anymore?
No.
Or they give you for 6 months. After 6 months, you spend it more, bring it back.
Up to you now. If you, after 6 months, you made a 6 month here. If you don't spend, but I don't consider.
That was the settlers.
That was the settlers. Yeah, that's what they used when they were coming.
Okay.
That's
so they were supposed to go back.
Yeah, this is not for the indigenous people. The indigenous people did not use this thing. They were already into their trading in the barter system and the Kisi bar and all those things. They didn't really focus on anything. They didn't work for Johnny just come in.
It was for the people that went to the colonization warehouse where
JJCs.
Not
yeah.
the okay.
No, they were not for. So even if you have been there 6 months, you're not entitled to these things again. For JJCs, then I just came, right? Who trying to get their foot supplanted in here and put stuff in the ground, put structure down. So for JJCs, it was not for everybody. It was for people who just came and were trying to get settled. If you have been there longer time, you already exhausted your 6 months already. You should be either making fun or doing business to sustain yourself.
Yeah, so basically after 6 months, you should have assimilated in the society to join the different battle.
This was for JJCs only.
Okay, let's stay. So Aruna is saying that let's leave the slavery business. It was good that you threw a challenge to Kau there for another show. So let's go to the money. So after all that was going on, so at some point, we started the real money now, the advent of the Liberian dollar.
Yeah, we started the real money after all that thing that happened, and then we started the real money now.
Okay.
So, as part of being an independent state or sovereign state, one of the prerequisites besides declaring independence, you have to have a form of exchange, right? A formal form of exchange and stuff like that. You have to basically establish a currency for that area that you claim to control. And so one of the first acts of the Liberian legislature in 1847 was to create the Liberian dollar.
Okay.
And so that's one of the very first things they did when Liberia became independent. That was the creation of the Liberian dollar. And an example of that would be that those coins bar that you see there, that was the first, what we know to be the Liberian money. That was the very first iteration of that you see there. So, and the reason they did that was somehow the Liberian leaders were very aware of the detriment of what they call paper money, right? And they were very aware about the devaluation of paper money, and so they spoke strongly against it, right? I put that quote up there because that's J.J. Roberts speaking to the Liberian legislature at the time, and telling them to create a legal form of tender in the country, but he was also very, very, very strong against the introduction of paper money that we call paper money now.
Yes,
very, very against it, and admonished them to not do that, right? The form of currency they should create should be something that will uplift the people. It will give them value and stuff like that. And so that's what he said. But he really guarded against. He went all of his way to guard against the introduction of paper money into the broader economy of the country.
So this parity with the Liberian money parity with the US dollar started from the beginning.
From the beginning, 1847, yes. It started off, the Liberian dollar was introduced at parity with the US dollar 1-to-1. They started off in 1847, 1 to 1, one Liberian dollar for one United States dollar. That's where it started off at.
Okay, I see. So then you can proceed. Do your presentation.
And after that, after that 1 to 1, things were okay for from independence up to a certain point, and then the government started to run into fiscal issues, right? Fiscal issue that led to debt issues that led to the devaluation of what became known as the Liberian dollar. One of the flashpoints was the Liberian government had problems, fiscal problem, but one of the things that exacerbated that made them to start printing money like crazy was the annexations of Maryland. What happened in Maryland in 1857 when Liberia annexed Maryland? That was a huge undertaking on the part of Liberia, and so it increased the national debt, right? And so to take care of those things, um, the Liberian government started to print what became known as paper money now.
Paper money.
So
Okay.
yes, to pay soldier salaries, to pay government expenses, to do other things that the government was needed to be done. So they just started to print money willy-nilly. And so that was the beginning of what became the devaluation of the Liberian dollar. That's what happened.
So the introduction of the paper money led to, Liberian economy led to devaluation of so it created inflation and all that stuff.
It created inflation. Even if you look at us from, and this is not just south of the Atlantic, and in those letters you will see them complaining about how things were hard, how prices were exorbitant. There was one instance where a woman met this guy, a person visiting Liberia, and told them she was going to Sierra Leone to go buy milk and eggs because it was too expensive in Liberia. So that such was the situation at the time with the Liberian dollar, and it was due to the fact that the government just started printing money to take care of these short-term fiscal problems that they were running into.
I see. Okay.
Yes, and then we all know this guy. If you don't know him, that's E.J. Roy. So was the condition that I just explained to you, the devaluation of the Liberian dollar and the hardship and everything that was going on. And then Roy came to power, right? And he had campaigned on a platform where he was going to take care of these things. He had laid out a way out for the country, how we could fix these things. And he was the guy because Roy was a businessman. He knew the economy, right? He was a very rich man. He understood the economy. He knew how it worked, and he understood to some extent finance also, right? So he knew what needed to be done to stem the hemorrhaging that was going on with the Liberian dollar, and so part of his very progressive agenda was to contract a loan, to go out there and contract a loan in the international market. And so that loan, part of that loan would be used to redeem the Liberian dollar that was out there that was backed by nothing, right? So they would put 25,000. So the loan was for 100,000 pounds. That would be equivalent. That was equivalent to 500,000 United States dollar at the time.
At that time, yeah.
Yeah, but the loan was actually denominated in pounds, so it was 100,000 pounds. And so 25,000 of that money was supposed to be deposited in the treasury to call the local debt, the debt Liberia had, in other words, to be used to back the Liberian currency so that we will have some sort of stable pricing, and the rest of it, the $50,000 worth of that, was supposed to be deposited for emergency fund. It's just supposed to be there just in case. That's emergency fund. So that was the initial goal. That's what the 1871 loan was supposed to cater to. But it's also important to understand that loan was taken, it was the government way of addressing the devaluation and the inflationary pressure that had been in the economy since the 1860s. And so that had Roy doing his campaign on these things and said, this is what we're going to do. That was his way of addressing the issue. What happened later on, you can watch Cole's show. She did a great presentation on that. You can see what happened to the loan and whatnot.
Okay, so the loan was meant to kind of, soften out or kind of address some of these
the fiscal pressure,
the fiscal issues that were occasioned by the introduction of the paper money. So what we do now, we try to move to what you call the British money and then the US dollars. But before we do that, we'll take a little break. Or is there something else you wanted to add on before we take the break?
No, this is about money. I don't want to go into Roy and the loan issue. No. You can take a break.
That. Yeah. Let's take a little break and then we'll come back and continue with the British money and the how we got the United States dollars and the Liberian dollar. We'll do that. Okay, let's take a break.
Allen Bernard International, or ABR, is a management consulting firm with a team of consultants and associates who focus on growing and transforming home healthcare agencies, non-profits, and small businesses in other industries as well as individuals. Our services include ABR Business Support Services, ABR Accounting and Tax Services, and ABR Anti-Money Laundering Compliance Services. At ABR, we bring to each assignment dedication and commitment, experience and skills, performance-based process, integrated solution teams, and client relations. For more inquiries on our services, call phone number 469-378-3955. That's Allen Bernard International, or ABR, transforming business through ideas.
So so that's a little break there. So let's move on. But before we move on, let's do a little explanation there. So the ad you just heard is a company called Allen Bernard International. And in short, they provide tax return preparation and filing services. They do business registration, obtaining EIN number, and other things. They also help set up your 501c entity, as well as they help, with the certification process of your healthcare agencies. Provide bookkeeping, accounting, payroll, as well as accounting software, QuickBooks. They do audit and compliance readiness and defense, and they do their anti-money laundering compliance services, as well as providing training and other services. Right now, they have a 20% discount on every new customer that come in. They also offer a 20% referral commission for anybody that refer a company or an individual to them. And you can contact them on the telephone number as well as the email address, depending on which one you choose. So let's go to the show. Mr. Harris.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then we come to the British.
The British West African currency?
Yeah.
So after the 1871 debacle with the Liberian dollar, with the 100,000 loan that Liberia took, Liberia basically defaulted beginning 1874. Liberia basically defaulted on that loan. right? And so every attempt to get the Liberian government to respond to the creditors failed. So Liberia remained indebted up until 1899, right? When she renegotiated that 1871 loan, right? And the renegotiation led to a more favorable loan terms, wherein Liberia had Liberia would have been charge 3% on the loan, and it will increase, and that 3% will increase by half a percentage points over the 3-year period, and it will cap at 5%. And so that was the renegotiation. So it gave the Liberian government a little bit of breathing room to go back into the international market and then renegotiate another loan. That renegotiation happened in 1906, right? And in 1906, Liberia went back in the market and got another 100,000 pound loan at I think at 6%, and it went back. That loan did not do well. Also, it ended up something like the 1871 loan, and and Liberia defaulted. And all through all these things, the Liberian dollar was still suffering. I have to understand, it was still hemorrhaging. It was still, I mean, from 1871 up until that point, there was devaluation of the Liberian dollar as we know it. The Liberian dollar constantly kept devaluating against other currencies. Well, not just the British pound sterling, it was the US dollar and other currencies that were there. So, as it is in the case when you have a devaluation in a particular currency, people in that economic zone turn to look for more stable currency. They turn to look the most stable currencies that they can do the business with, or they can get paid in goods and services with. So it was the case that the British West African currencies has started to circulate. The British started using those West African currency in 1825 in their colonies, and somehow they made their way down the coast through trades and whatnot. And so it was circulating in the area that is now Liberia, and given the currency devaluation that was happening in Liberia, traders and other people doing businesses and rendering services started to go towards more like they started to move more towards like accepting the British West African currency as opposed to the Liberian dollar. So even though the Liberian dollar was still enjoying legal tender status there, but for actual economic activities, people were more inclined to use the British West African currency. They were taking that on as opposed to the Liberian dollar. And if you wanted to have value in whatever you were doing, you would go for the British West African currency as opposed to the Liberian dollar that was continuously devaluating. And that actually happened around 1907. The British West African currency became a legal tender, even though it had been circulating and people were using it. The Liberian government started collecting taxes in it in 1907, thus making it an official currency of the Liberian government, thus giving it legal tender status also alongside what was the Liberian dollar. So you had these two competing currencies there. So that's how we ended up with the British West African currency in the Liberian economy.
So by that, the British had come, they had their own colonies like Ghana,
Ghana,
Nigeria,
Sierra Leone,
so
Gambia.
they were using the British West African currency, and then it flowed back into other countries like Liberia included. Okay, I see. So then that became in 1907. It became legal tender. So it was the Liberian dollar and the
British West African currency.
And the British West African currency that was running. Then what happened next?
And then a miracle happened, right? So after the botched 1906 loan, Liberia turned to America, right, and asked America for financial help. President Roosevelt, it was the period known as the era of the dollar diplomacy, right? President Roosevelt sent a team to Liberia to assess the financial condition in the country, because what had happened, America had actually wrote a scheme in 1905 in the Dominican Republic where they gave a loan and they set up a receivership there where and American people were going to be collecting those loans, right? I mean, collecting the proceeds from those loans to pay out the debt that the Dominican Republic had contracted from America. So it was a success, right? And so the American toy would have worked in Liberia. So they decided to implement similar scheme in Liberia. So in 1912, right, America made a loan to Liberia for $1.7 million. Now, this was the first time that the Liberian debt was denominated in United States dollars.
United States dollars. Okay.
All along, Liberian debt had been in British pound sterling. But the 1912 $1.7 million loan was the very first time Liberia debt had been denominated in United States dollar. But even though the debt was denominated in the United States dollar, there were protests from Great Britain and France and Germany that America wanted to control Liberia and blah blah, the whole international politic thing. And so America had to raise some of that debt in those various countries. So part of the debt was raised in France, part was raised in Germany, part was raised in the United States, part was raised in Britain. So, and then they set up a receivership where an American custom person would have been collecting the money. It's very important. And I mean, we'll just go off track here a little bit. I'm explaining these things. It's just about the Liberian dollar, but along the way, there was conflict that was caused by these policies by the Liberian government. So when they set up these receiverships, like they did in 1906 and 1912, the government, all the proceeds are collected, like the custom duties and all those things that government used to pay off their debt were not going to the government directly now. So the government had to look for different ways to finance itself because they were not getting those monies or the revenue that it was supposed to be getting, because all was going toward the repayment of the debt. And that's when you see in Liberia history, when you look at the disturbances that started to happen along the Crew Coast, that's when the government started squeezing our people out for the hot tax and all those different disturbances that you saw happening, the Joa Nimlin thing, and all those different wars that were fought on the Crew Coast. This was the origin, if you traced it. The government was cash strapped and nowhere to turn, and they started to put pressure on local population to raise what your finance people can call domestic revenue mobilization. That was a kind of domestic revenue mobilization that was going on during that time, and this led to conflict with our people on the coast, and it even led to the Fanatical crisis and all those different things that you can come down with. This is what happened. The government was cash strapped. And after that, I mean, I just went off track. And then after that, after the Liberian dollar loan, I mean, after the US had made that loan to Liberia, and everything started to go from there on. And then there was this international monetary problem where the pound sterling started to devalue against the United States dollar also. And it made it difficult for Liberia to service her sterling debt. Some of the debt that she had was in sterling, pound sterling. It was difficult for her to service those debt. It was expensive because of the devaluation of the sterling against the USD. And so in 1935, the Liberian legislature passed a law that that transitioned the Liberian economy from the pound sterling to the United States dollar. But that law did not go into effect until 1943, because what was happening here now, Liberia, you have to understand, Firestone signed her concession in 1925, and she started operation in 1929. So Firestone was a big factor there also. So with the advent of Firestone and everything that was going on, Liberia trade now did not have to go to Britain now. Britain was not Liberia's foremost trading partner now. Everything shifted to the United States. And with the United States in 1943, the war was going to war. We have American GIs in Liberia. They needed to get pay and all that stuff. So This is when the whole United States dollarization of the Liberian economy actually took full effect. Post Firestone, post World War II, I mean pre-World War II, and stuff like that. That's when you saw the inflow of the United States dollar into the Liberian economy, and then how we got rid of the pound sterling.
So basically, the pound sterling was getting weak.
Yeah.
The war was
coming.
coming.
As the Liberian dollar, it was suffering the same fate as the Liberian dollar before.
Like the Liberian dollar.
And
so
yeah,
we give it.
We gave it, and but Uncle Sam stepped in. Uncle Sam said that Uncle Sam decided to take control now and said, "I'm a stepchild here, and
I'm a stepchild here, yeah."
So, and
then the big Firestone came. The big Firestone came. It just muddied the water for the
Firestone muddied the water because Firestone had people, they had to pay in US dollar and stuff like that, and then the World War II happened, right? The war was just on the cups of World War II in 43, 44, like that, and so there were GRs, right? There were American GRs there too that needed to get paid and whatnot. So it was just an infusion of United States dollar into Liberia during that time.
I see. So yeah. So then they started this whole Liberian. Liberian dollar, the American dollar.
American dollar and Liberian. Yeah.
Okay.
That 43. So started from 43.
Then it was the same paper currency that we're using that started from I think
1860.
18. Yeah. Okay. So it was the same paper currency that was going on.
Yeah, with paper currency, the paper currency were always there, but like it is in Liberia today, we still have our paper currency, but everybody really transacts through US dollars and stuff like that for the most part in terms of actual value. So it was still the same. So the Liberian dollar did not go away per se. It was somewhere lurking. It was there. It was always there, but it was running parallel to the USD.
I wonder we didn't get a sample of that. I wonder who picture were on that Liberian currency at that time.
I don't know. I only got sample of the older ones, right? I don't think we have president pictures on money and back in the day like that. It started to happen, I think, around our old man time. Maybe our old man brought it in because a lot of what happened in Liberia now after that time, because he came in, I think he became president in 43.
Yes.
Yeah, and so after that time now, when you see everything else, he started to put in his own shadow. So maybe around that time, that's when you started to see President faces then appearing on money and stuff like that.
Okay. Well, great. We'll certainly continue with this now from Tottenham time to Tottenham.
Yeah, from after next week we'll do from Tottenham. What happened after the old man? What? And then we go into the Doe coin. Then we'll come to the Liberty and JJ.
Then we'll talk about the central bank role in printing currency and things like that. Okay. So we'll do that. So we said we're going to keep this show for an hour. We're just about the hour mark. We're not doing the telephone call thing today, and we don't see further comments that I think we kind of dealt with the comments during the presentation. So what's your? What in let me ask a question starting from the beginning till now. So will you say like most, like we say in marriage, there are few things that cause marriages to break, that cause divorce. All right. One of them, if not number one, is number two, is finance.
Yeah.
It depends on where you find yourself. So for example, in the US, finance is either the number one problem or the number two problem that cause marriages to break, right? So will you say this money business has been one of the problems that have led to different crises, whether it's economic crisis, whether it's war? Because you just talked about the introduction of the hot tax that led to some of the rebellion back in the day on the east coast of the southeast coast of Liberia.
Yeah, so there's an adage, they say follow the money, right? If you want to know the history of a people, follow the fiscal history of a people, you will understand what had transpired. So, and that's the route I've taken, right? All the love of liberty brought us here and all that thing, it's fine. Well, love of liberty brought us here, but underpinning that love of liberty brought us here is money, is finance, is trade, right? It's economics, right? So underpinning all that thing that you see happening up there is are those things. Those are the underpinning themes that encapsulate all the political crises that you talk about in our country. So you can go back to 1840. 1840, there was a problem. The Liberian government, the colonial government, or the Commonwealth government passed a law that to collect taxes on trade goods, right? But they exempted the church, and the church were exempt. But what happened was, the Methodist Church at the time, led by the Reverend John Sayes brought some goods, trade goods to the country, but it was not for trade. So the government said you can bring trade goods, the church can bring trade goods, but you can't sell it. If you sell it, you have to pay taxes. So Sayes said, okay, I bring the trade goods, because Sayes was going to use those goods to pay people in the colony, people that were working for the church. You're going to pay them in trade goods. So that was the goods, right? And so this whole thing happened where he got into a scuffle with the governor at the time, Governor Buchanan, and it was a whole big thing. And then how you see the whole anti-administration, that was the beginning part of politics. Crystallized politics in Liberia started because of taxes. It started because of revenue at the end of the day. Because before that, everybody was all well. There was no anti-administration. There was no pro-administration. It was after that, Sid led an informal group of guys. They called them the anti-administration party, but they were informally called the Sid's party. And so in 1840, they had a colonial election, even though Sid and his guys lost badly. But a couple of his men got won. And that's where you see the anti-administration party and the administration party that later on morphed into the true Republican Party and the true Whig Party. Those were the lineages that they come from. So at the end of the day, it was all about money, finance, economics. That's what underpinned those things. So this is the theme throughout Liberia history, even to where we are now. These are the themes that underpin all these things.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Harris. Thank you for the presentation today. We will continue next Saturday to end this two-part series. We said we're going to do it in 1 hour. We are doing it in 1 hour, and then Mr. Runa have a comment here that Mr. Keita has a comment. Money is the lifeblood of any undertaking. Therefore, if it is not sufficient enough, there will be trouble. You see that?
I totally agree with him. I agree. Most of what happened to Liberia, whether it be expansion or encroachment on her land, she couldn't defend herself, was due to the fact that she had limited resources, very limited, and sometimes it required her negotiating her way out of these problems and stuff like that. So I totally agree with him.
Yeah, even in real life, in whether it's marriage or whether it's something, that, for example, you get money to support the family like that. Sometimes you start getting disrespect and all that kind of stuff, right?
It may take it all the way down to that level. I agree. No, I agree. It's just that we have to look at it in our national light, and this is what was happening. If the stories of Liberia is told like this, I think you will come away with an understanding on why people did what they did. So another place I've been educating myself at is watching those old tapes from the TRC. And then you see guys like George Boley talking about how their grandparents did this too. You see guys like Con Carlo talking about what happened to their grandparents when the Liberian Frontier Forces came. All these things are tied to the resources of the country. What happened? The government became more aggressive because they were not getting revenue, not coming into them again. It was going to foreigners now. and the foreigner was using it to pay their debt. So the government had to come up with other ways to raise revenue. Like I said, domestic revenue mobilization was into full drive. And that's what happened to our people. And in the process, the government mistreated them, ill-treated them, did not listen to them, and all these things happen, right? And when you tell the stories from this perspective, because when you listen to Carlos, Sawyer, and these guys, what they are leaving out, they're not telling you why the government policy was this rigid. They're not telling you that. They're giving you the personal side of their experiences, why our people were treated like this, but they're not giving you the policy side of things, why the government did what it did. This was a cash-strapped government from 1860 up until 1960, something when the old man paid off all of debt.
Old man Tubman.
Yes. We did not get out of the debt trap until 1960 something. And that's when he paid up all those debt off. He paid them off due to the concession that was coming into the country from Firestone and other places. Then the other concessions that came during his time, like bro, were able to start a clean slate from all those historical debt burdens. And then we ran back. Then we ran back into it again. Yeah, but we'll talk about that one next time.
Yo, bro, we'll talk about that one. Yeah, great. I mean, great presentation. And we ended out on a note that, like you said, just going back to what Mr. Keita wrote up there. They say money is the root of all evils, right? So money is the thing that do. So thank you, Percy.
Thank you guys for the opportunity. I will be back next week.
Yeah, and thanks for all our many listeners and our supporters. We will be here back on Saturday next week. We're at the same time. We will also, after that, we will also be doing different show. We're planning ahead, financial planning series. We'll do a business focus where we want to showcase Liberian businesses and things like that. But for today, we thank you for your listenership. We thank you for your support. Again, this is a Focus on Liberia Marketplace, where we discuss business, economic, and finance, and all things Liberia. Thank you for listening, and see you next Saturday, same time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 8 p.m. Liberian time. Thank you. We will...
We are Liberian. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Either you raise it or we want. Liberia, oh. Either you raise it or we want. Liberia, be Liberia.